Hey, what is going on, you guys? Today, I'm going to be taking you step by step on how to make an investment tracker that will automatically track all of your stock, crypto, and ETF investments. And as you can see, we are currently looking at the Investments Dashboard tab. Here you can see we're tracking things like our portfolio value, portfolio growth, and our portfolio dollar gain. And then this is all broken out into our stock breakdown where we can see our value, growth, gain, and dividend income. We have a crypto breakdown where we can see those things in crypto as well, and our ETF breakdown. And then we have a lot of really useful charts. So you can see we have a chart for our allocation by asset, where you can see stocks is about 47% here, crypto 42, and ETFs 11. And then we can see our investments growth. So we can see our crypto investments growth, our ETF investments growth, as well as our stocks growth. And then here you can see we have our individual investments again with their cost versus their market value. And here you can see our individual holdings by allocation, and you can see our ETF geomap. And what this is going to do is it's going to show how much capital we have tied up in each of these countries in our ETFs. So if we click on this, you can see $448 is tied up in the United States, $363 in China, $151 in India, and so forth. So let's go ahead and show an example of how this works. So let's say that I want to buy a new stock and a new crypto. So let's jump over to my stocks tab, and we'll say that I bought AT&T and I bought 10 shares at a purchase price of $27 a share. I'll hit enter. Then what I'll do is I'll highlight this row right here and drag it down. And once I've done that, you can see AT&T's metrics have all been automatically pulled by this investment tracker. We can see things like its current price, the cost, market value. We can see our dollar gain and growth. We have a 1-year trend line. And then we have all of this dividend data on AT&T, and we can also see what industry they're in. And then it's all rolled up into these charts as well. So let's check our crypto tab as well. And let's say I bought a new cryptocurrency as well, and I bought 200 of it, and we'll say I paid $2 for each share. I'll hit enter. Then I'll do the same thing. I'll highlight this and drag it down. And you can see all of these metrics are automatically being pulled as well, and they've rolled into these charts. And both of these new purchases have rolled into our investment dashboard as well. So here we can see here's AT&T listed, which is the stock we just purchased, and here is the cryptocurrency we just purchased. So all of these charts have changed accordingly, and you can see our crypto breakdown has changed as well as our stock breakdown has changed. So now you can see how this is a completely interactive spreadsheet. If you'd like to be able to download this investment tracker, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the video. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is open a new Google spreadsheet, and I'm going to come up here to the top left and just go ahead and title this investment tracker, and I'm going to title this tab down here at the bottom dashboard. And let's go ahead and start our stocks tab, and this is where we're going to track all of our stock investments. So I'm going to just title this tab stocks, and we're going to come up here to the top and just kind of give it a header, and you can either put investment tracker here or stock tracker here, whatever you want to put to track your stocks. So all I did was merge these cells, and I'm going to center this text here, and let's go ahead and give it outer borders as well, and let's try increasing the font size. So now we're ready to actually start tracking our investments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put symbol here, and I'm going to put shares here, and I'm going to put purchase right here, and I'm going to go ahead and jump forward and list some investments that I have in stocks. Okay, so I jumped forward, and I've listed some random samples of what some stock investments might look like, just so we have some sample data. And now I'm going to want to see the price, the cost, and the market value of each of these investments. So for price, what we're going to do is we are going to use the Google Finance formula, and I'm going to click on Apple here and close this off and hit enter. You can see using the Google Finance formula, we can automatically pull the current price for each of these investments. And so now for our cost, we're going to have a relatively simple formula. We're going to do equals our shares multiplied by our purchase price and hit enter. And we can go ahead and fill this in, and now we have the cost for each of these investments. Our market value will be similar. We'll do shares multiplied by the current price and hit enter. So now that we have all that, let's go ahead and start working on our dollar gain and our growth. So for our dollar gain, all we need to do is we'll take our market value and subtract that by our cost. We'll hit enter. Now we can see how much we've made on each of these investments here. And for our growth, just a little bit more complicated of a formula, but not too hard. We're going to do open parentheses. We're going to take our market value, subtract it from our cost, and we're going to divide that by our cost. You can see we have our growth in decimals right now. So let's go ahead and highlight this and make this a percentage. And so now we can see exactly how much each of these investments have grown. So now let's go ahead and make a 1-year trend line. And this is a really cool formula. What we're going to do is we're going to combine the sparkline formula with the Google Finance formula. And I'll be sure to have any of the more complicated formulas posted in the description. So if you get lost, you can just copy and paste those formulas down below. And I'm going to type out price here in the formula because we want to make a price trend line. And now we need to indicate to it that we want it to be a 1-year trend line. So I'm going to type out today minus 364, comma, today. And I'm going to hit enter, and you can see now we have a 1-year trend line for Apple. So let's go ahead and drag this down. And now we have our trend lines for all of our stock investments. So now we want to pull the dividend data, and to do this, we're actually going to need to web scrape data from finviz.com. So what we're going to do is we're going to type out Apple's stock ticker. And if I scroll down here, you're going to see a table with a lot of data. And right here, the dividend is listed. And this is what we want to web scrape from this table. So what we're going to do is I'm going to post a formula that's going to web scrape this data. I have a video on how to web scrape on my channel in Google Sheets if you're interested, but I'm just going to copy and paste this formula here for now. And you can see now that I've copied and pasted it, we have the amount paid in dividends for each of these investments, and it looks like it's correct. So let's go ahead and drag this down. And everything seems to be working correctly. So now we have how much each of these companies pays in dividends. So what we can do off of that is we can work on our current dividend yield. And I'll hit enter. Let's go ahead and pull this column out. And for our current dividend yield, all we're going to do is take the amount paid in dividends and divide that by the price. And we'll hit enter. And we have a long decimal number again. That's because this needs to be a percentage. So let's go ahead and change this to a %. And now we need to see our dividend yield on cost. And our dividend yield on cost is going to be the dividend yield we received when we purchased the stock. So let's go ahead and do equals. We'll select our dividend again, and we will divide this by our purchase price and hit enter. And again, we're going to want to make this a percentage. And now we have that. So now what I want to see is I want to see how much dividend income I can expect to make yearly from each of these stock investments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals, and I'm going to take the amount paid in dividends and multiply it by the number of shares that I own. And I'll hit enter, and now I can see how much I'll make in dividend income from each of these investments. So one more thing we want to have on this stock tracker is I want to be able to see industry. And we are going to have to web scrape data once again, and I'm going to actually head over to Fidelity Research to web scrape this data this time. So I'm going to type out Apple stock ticker, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and it should list the industry somewhere here. Let's see. And okay, we can see right here, Apple is in information technology, and we want to web scrape that data and put it into our spreadsheet. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste a formula here, and you can copy and paste this formula from the description below. And you can see now I have my industry. So let's go ahead and drag this down, and we'll see if this formula is working correctly. And it appears that it is working correctly. So now we have the industry that each of these stocks is in. So let's go ahead and highlight this whole table. We'll center this text to make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to go ahead and highlight my industry and dividend, and we will fix the font. So now let's go ahead and zoom out to about 90%. And let's see, what we'll do now is we will go ahead and start giving some of these things some outer borders just to kind of make everything look a little bit cleaner. Be sure to rewind or slow down the video if you need more time. So I'm just going to highlight off a huge section just to kind of box off all my investments and leave room for future investments as well. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually add a lot of rows above here. And what this is going to do is this is going to leave me some room to add some charts. And so for this first chart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of my symbols, and I'm going to highlight the cost of all of these symbols. But I'm also going to highlight the market value of all of these symbols. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a chart that compares our cost versus our market value. And you can see all I did was go to insert and clicked on chart, and we automatically have a column chart given to us. It looks pretty good. We're just going to make a few adjustments to it real quick. So first, we want to make sure that people know that this blue line is our cost. And then we need to make this red our market value line. So we're just going to indicate that here by double clicking on this. And I'll hit enter there. So now let's just go ahead and resize this here a little bit so it fits. And let's go ahead and start on our next chart. And for this one, I want to see an allocation chart. So let's go ahead and just track our symbols market value. And for this one, we want to make a pie chart. So I'm going to go to insert chart, but here you'll see we can adjust what kind of chart we have, and I'm going to click on pie. So now we can see where most of our capital is tied up in. So for example, you can see here Coca-Cola takes up the largest part of my portfolio. And I'm just going to go ahead and resize this as well. So let's go ahead and make one more chart. And for this chart, I want to see how much I can expect to make in dividend income from each of my investments. So I'm going to highlight the dividend income, and let's go ahead and go back to insert chart, and we'll probably keep it a column chart, but you can adjust it to how you want. So I'm going to drag this over here and reformat it just a little bit. And we'll set it to where it's about the same size as these other charts. And we'll put it right here, and we'll go ahead and reformat these as well so they're centered. But we will come back and reformat and make sure everything is correct later on as well. So it doesn't have to be perfect right now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some titles to these charts. And if you double click on it, it should give you the option to give it a chart title. I'm just going to title this one Cost versus Market Value. And hit enter. Now I'm going to go over, bold this text, and now let's make a title for this other chart. All I'm going to do for this chart is just title it Allocation. I'll come down here and click on bold the text. And I'm going to do the same thing for this chart. I'll title this one Dividend Income. And I'm going to bold the text here as well. So now I'm going to add a new tab, and we are going to make our cryptocurrency tracker here. And just like the other one, I'm going to have a header. So I'm just going to merge these cells and title this crypto tracker. And let's go ahead and try increasing the font size here. And so now we actually need to start tracking our cryptocurrencies. So I'm going to have my coin listed, the amount bought, and the purchase price. And I'm going to spread out these columns just a little bit. And so I went ahead and jumped forward and copied and pasted some sample data. But now we want to go ahead and pull the current price. So again, we need to web scrape data in order to pull the current price for our cryptocurrencies. And we're going to do that from coinmarketcap.com. And you can see it has different cryptocurrencies' current prices listed here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to web scrape this data and put it into my spreadsheet. So let's jump back over. I'm going to put this formula in, and this formula will be in the description so you can copy and paste it. But you can see now that I have this formula in, the current price for each of these cryptocurrencies is currently showing up. And it looks like it is correct, and it'll update periodically by itself. So now let's go ahead and get our cost. And our cost is just going to be the amount we bought multiplied by our purchase price. And now let's go ahead and get our market value as well. And that's just going to be the amount bought multiplied by the current price. And now we're ready to see our dollar gain and our growth. And we've gone over these formulas before. Our dollar gain is just going to be our market value subtracted by our cost. Now we want to see our growth. And we're going to do the equal sign, take our market value and subtract it by our cost. And then we're going to divide it by our cost once again. So now we need to set this to a percentage just like we did on our stocks tab. And we now have the data that we need for our cryptocurrency tracker. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean this up. We'll add some borders here, and I'll leave some room for future investments as well. So now I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the stocks tab. We're going to insert some rows here so we have room to make charts. And the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to make a chart showing my cost versus my market value. So again, I'm going to highlight all of my cryptocurrency investments, and we're also going to highlight our cost as well as our market value. We'll come up here to insert and click on chart. And you can see we currently have a bar chart, which is what we're going to use. So we'll bring it up here to the top. And again, we'll title the blue cost. And then we'll come up here and title the red bars our market value. And if we go back right here, we can also go ahead and give this chart a title while we're at it, and I'm just going to title it cost versus market value. And we'll resize this and make sure that it fits right here. So let's go ahead and add one more chart for our cryptocurrencies, and I want to see my crypto allocation. So we're going to take our market value and our coin, we'll insert a chart, and this time I want to see a pie chart. So we'll make that adjustment here and click on pie chart. So now we can see which cryptocurrencies take up the majority of our cryptocurrency portfolio. And let's go ahead and give it a title, and I'm just going to title this crypto allocation. And I'm just going to resize it and put it right by here for now. And like I said earlier, we'll come back and make any formatting adjustments that we need to later on. So now we're going to come down here and add a new tab, and now we're ready to make our ETF tracking tab. And just like all the other ones, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to type out ETF Tracker. And I'll give this outer borders, increase the font size just like I have been. And we want to see similar metrics that we've been seeing earlier. So I want to know the symbol, the number of shares, and the purchase price. And I'm just going to go ahead and list a couple of random ETFs. So I'll put this one. This is an emerging markets ETF. I'll put a random number of shares and a purchase price. And I'll go ahead and put an S&P 500 ETF in here as well. So now we want to see our current price, and just like earlier, we are going to use the Google Finance function and highlight our symbol, and it will automatically pull the current price for us. And I'll drag this formula down, and it looks like it's working correctly, so let's go ahead and move on to our cost. And our cost, you should know it by now, it's our shares multiplied by our purchase price. We'll hit enter. Now we want to see our market value. And we're going to multiply that by our current price and hit enter. Now we want to see our dollar gain and our growth. And for our dollar gain, we are going to take our market value and subtract that by our cost. And hit enter, and our growth, we are going to take our dollar gain and divide it by, let me go ahead and make this correction. We're going to take our market value, subtract it from our cost, and then divide by our cost. Another way to do that would just be to take the dollar gain and divide it by our cost. Let's go ahead and make this a percentage. And I'm going to go ahead and give this borders just like I have been with my other trackers. And I'll leave some space for some future ETF purchases as well. And now I'm going to actually track my individual ETF holdings. And in order to do this, I'm actually going to need to download some data on each of my ETFs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to iShares.com, and I'm going to type out the ETF that I have purchased. And I'm going to search for it here, and we can see it showing up right here, the Emerging Markets ETF. And you should have the option to download this as a spreadsheet up here at the top right. So I'm going to download this here. And it's going to download as an Excel file. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And you can see right here, there's a tab that's going to show this holdings for this ETF. And we're going to use some of the data on this spreadsheet, and I'm going to copy and paste it over to my Google spreadsheet. And okay, so now we have the data in Google Spreadsheets. So now we need to do some data cleaning and data reformatting to get the correct data that we need in order to make our analysis on our individual holdings. So I'm going to delete a few columns that we don't need and delete some data here. And we are going to make this a percentage. And we'll go ahead and delete this column here. And like I said earlier, be sure to pause and rewind if you need to see what I'm doing here. And I'm going to delete all three of these columns here. Okay, so now you can see all the data that I have, and this is the only data that I need in order to make my ETF analysis. So I'm going to get rid of some of these headers up here at the top that we don't need. And I'm just going to go ahead and fix this here the way I want it. We're going to merge these cells here, and I'm going to copy and paste this into those merged cells, just so it's a little more centered. And let's go ahead and center this here. and increase the font size as well. And I'll give this outer borders. So now let's go ahead and make a place where we can make our individual analysis on this, ETF. And so I want to know the ticker, I want to know the shares, and I need to know the purchase price. So the same thing that we had earlier on our other spreadsheet. So for our ticker, I'm just going to list the symbol. It's the same thing. Then I need to list the number of shares that I purchased as well as the purchase price here. And here I want to have the current price, which again, we'll just use the Google Finance function for this. And now I want to know my cost. And we're just going to take the number of shares multiplied by my purchase price. And now the last thing I need here is my market value. And we just need to multiply the number of shares multiplied by the current price. So let's go ahead and give this borders as well, just to make it look a little bit nicer. So now we're ready to make an analysis on the value by location for this ETF. So what we're going to do is we need to know the market value of each of this ETF's holdings. So we're going to multiply our market value times the weight and hit enter. So now we can see how much value each of these individual holdings in the ETF has. So I'm going to add some dollar signs in this formula to make it an interactive formula. And now I'm going to drag this down. So now we can see the market value of each of the holdings in this ETF. And what we can now do is we can make a value by location analysis, which will lead to the creation of our geomap. So I'm going to out here to the side type out value by location. And I'll center this text here. I'm going to go ahead and give this outer borders here as well while I'm at it. And now I need to know all of the locations listed in this ETF. So to do that, I'm going to use the unique formula and highlight this entire column right here and hit enter. So now we can see each location listed one time that is in this ETF. And now we need to know the value that is in each of these locations. So we're going to use a sum if formula. And we're going to highlight all of the locations in each of these holdings and do a comma, and now we're going to list off each of the unique locations listed just one time. And we'll do a comma, and now we need to list the market value of all the holdings. And what this is going to do is it's going to show us the value of each of these locations. So when I scroll up here, you can see the value of Taiwan listed, and if I drag this formula down, now we can see how much capital we have tied up in each of these locations. So I'm going to highlight this now, and we're going to go ahead and give it outer borders. And now we can go ahead and use this data to make our geomap. So I'm going to come over here, insert chart, and we're going to make an adjustment. If we scroll down near the bottom, you can see the option to make a geomap. So let's go ahead and drag this up here near the top. And we're going to put it right above our value by location. And let's go ahead and make some more space for this chart. So I'm going to insert a few more rows so we can make this chart bigger. And if I click on this chart, you can see now if I hover my cursor over each of these countries, we can see exactly how much capital we have tied up in each of these locations. And the colors allow us to see where most of the capital is tied up as well. So now what I've done is I just went ahead and jumped forward and went ahead and created my other ETF individual holding. You saw exactly how I made that last one, just do the same thing for this one. So now we're ready to finish our ETF tracker. And what we're going to do here for this ETF tracker is I want to see my holdings by location, but I want to combine the two ETFs that I hold so I can see one geo map with both locations listed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals. We're going to go over to my first emerging markets ETF and hit enter on Taiwan. And we're just going to drag this down and it's going to list all of the countries listed in this ETF. And now I'm going to do equals the market value for each of these locations and drag this down as well. And I'm right below this. I'm going to do the same thing for my other ETF. And you can see in this ETF, it's a S&P ETF. So the only location listed is the United States. So we're just going to add this on to our list. So now we have the value for both of our ETFs locations, and we're going to use this to make our complete geomap with both ETFs included. So I'm going to highlight this and go up to insert and click on chart. It's currently showing as a pie chart. Let's go ahead and change this to a geomap. And so now we can see we have a geomap that is going to show the value by each location. So now let's go ahead and make a cost versus market value chart as well, just like we have for all of our other individual analysis. And it's showing up as a column chart. That works perfect. So let's go ahead and drag this over and just do a little bit of formatting real quick. And I'm going to title my blue my market value and the red the cost. Let's go ahead and add a title, and we'll just make this our cost versus our market value. So now our ETF tracker is complete here. And you can see again, if we jump into our geomap, we can see exactly how much capital we have tied up in each of these locations. Looks like the United States and China is where most of the capital in these two ETFs is tied up in. So let's jump back over to our stocks. And what we want to do now is I want to add conditional formatting to my growth and my dollar gain. So what I'm going to do is highlight those columns and go to format, and we'll click on conditional formatting. And we want to say anything that's greater than 0, we want to show up as green. So I'll select green, and I'm going to add another rule. And we want to say anything less than 0, we want to show up as red. So I'll click on done here. And you can see now, this is going to be a great way to quickly see which of my holdings are above 0 and which are below 0. So we're going to do the same thing for my crypto tracker. Anything. Let me go ahead and fix the font for this real quick. And we'll center this text as well to make it look nicer. But now we want to say anything that is above 0 in our dollar gain or growth, we want to show up green, just like we did for our last one. And we want to say anything that is less than 0, we want to show up as red. So now we have conditional formatting for our crypto tracker. Let's jump over to our ETF, and we'll do the same thing here as well. Let's go ahead and center this text to make it look nicer, and now we can add our conditional formatting. We'll say anything greater than 0 should show up green, and anything that is less than 0 we want to show up as red. So now let's jump back over to our stocks tab. And okay, I went ahead and jumped forward, and all I've done is colored everything in. So don't freak out. Just go ahead and color everything in how you want it. But for the sake of time, I just went ahead and jumped forward and colored everything in. And you can see I just went ahead and showed how I colored everything in, so feel free to copy me or do it your own way if that's how you rather do it. But now we're actually ready to make our dashboard tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the top, and I'm going to highlight these cells and merge these cells. And here is where we're going to make our investment tracker dashboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and put investment dashboard right here. And let's increase the font size. Let's try just a little bit bigger. And 36 looks like it should work. So let's go ahead and give it outer borders as well. And we will bold this text as well. If we come below here, this is where we want to make our portfolio analysis at a glance. And here I want to be able to see my portfolio value. And I'll merge these cells. And below it, I want to be able to see my portfolio growth. And below that, I want to be able to see my portfolio dollar gain. And I'll merge these cells beside it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and box this off with some borders, and we'll come back to the calculations for this later. But for now, let's just go ahead and bold this text, center this text as well. And we'll come over here to the side, and what we're going to do here is we're going to merge these cells, and we're going to make our stock breakdown right here. So I'm just going to label this as stock breakdown. And I'm going to merge these cells below it as well. And I want this to be the stock's market value listed right here. Below that, I'm going to do the same thing, but here I want to be able to see the growth. Below that, I'm going to merge these cells again, and here I want to be able to see my dollar gain. And below this, I also want to be able to know what my yearly dividend income will be, so I'm going to list that off as well. So now let's go ahead and highlight this, and we're going to go ahead and give this outer borders, and we'll center this text as well. And for our stock's market value, all we need to do is type out equals. We'll use a sum formula. Let's go over here and highlight the market value column on our stocks tab, close the parentheses and hit enter. And now we can see the total market value for all of our stock investments. And now we want to be able to see our growth. So we're going to do the equal sum formula here, and we're going to highlight our dollar gain. And now we're going to divide that and use the sum formula once again, and we're going to highlight our cost column. And here I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see it's showing up as a decimal. We'll fix it to a percentage. Now we can see how much of our stock investments have grown. Now we want to see this as a dollar gain. So all we're going to do is use that sum formula again. We'll scroll up on our stocks tab, and we're going to highlight our dollar gain. And the last thing that I want to be able to see is my yearly dividend income. So I'm going to do equal sum, and I'm just going to highlight my dividend income column. So now we have all the analysis we need for our stock breakdown tab. And I'm going to highlight this and make this dollars. And I'm going to give this an outer border here as well. And I'm going to go ahead and bold this to make it stand out just a little bit more. And we're going to increase the font size of our stock breakdown. So now below this, what we want to do is we want to make our cryptocurrency breakdown. So I'm going to do almost the exact same thing that I just did for my stock breakdown. I'm going to come below here and type out crypto breakdown after merging those cells. And below this, I want to be able to see my crypto market value. So I'm going to merge those cells and type out crypto market value. And below it, I'll merge these cells, and I want to be able to see my growth. And then below that, I want to be able to see my dollar gain. And let's go ahead and give this borders here. And we'll give my crypto breakdown borders as well. And And here we want to be able to see my cryptocurrency market value. So we'll do equal sum. We'll jump over to my crypto tab and we're going to highlight my market value column. We'll close that off and hit enter. So now we can see my cryptocurrency's market value. Now we want to see my growth. So we'll jump back over to my crypto tab. We'll do the sum of my dollar gain. We'll close that off and do divide. And we'll do another sum formula and highlight my cost. And I'll hit enter and we'll convert that to a percentage. So now we can see my cryptocurrency's growth. And the final thing we need is my dollar gain. So I'll just do sum and highlight my dollar gain. I'll hit enter. And so now we have all the metrics that we need for my crypto breakdown. We will turn these into dollars and we'll highlight this whole thing. Let's go ahead and center this text, make sure that it's bolded. And I'll increase the font size just a little bit. And finally, we need our ETF breakdown right here. So let's go ahead and type out ETF breakdown. And just like my crypto breakdown, I want to be able to see my ETF market value, my growth, and my dollar gain. So I'm going to go ahead and list those metrics out right here. And for my ETF breakdown, let's go ahead and give this outer borders. We'll give this title a border as well. And for my ETF market value, we'll do equal sum, jump over to our ETF tab and highlight everything in my market value column. We'll hit enter. For my growth column, we're going to do equals the sum. And we're going to take everything in my dollar gain and divide that by the sum of my cost column. Now we just need our dollar gain. And we're just going to do the sum of everything in my dollar gain. So now let's go ahead and make these dollar signs and make this a percentage. And we'll highlight this whole thing. We'll bold this text. We'll center the text as well. And let's go ahead and increase the font size just a little bit of the ETF breakdown. Okay, so now let's go ahead and jump back over to our portfolio value. We're just going to make this the sum of my stock breakdown, my crypto breakdown, and my ETF breakdown. And that'll show us the total value of my portfolio. And now let's go ahead and show my portfolio dollar gain. We're just going to sum the values of my ETF dollar gain, crypto dollar gain, and my stock dollar gain. And we'll hit enter. So now we can see the total dollar gain of our investments. And now we want to see our portfolio's growth. And you can see what I'm doing here for my formula. We want to divide by the portfolio's cost, and you can see how I did that there. And you can now see the portfolio's total growth. So now we're ready to go ahead and start making our charts. So the first chart I want to make is an allocation by asset chart. So I'm going to highlight the market value of each of these metrics, and it's showing as a bar chart right now. Let's go ahead and jump over, and I want to make this a donut chart. And let's go ahead and switch this. And okay, so now we can see how much capital we have tied up in our stocks, our ETFs, and our cryptocurrencies. So let's go ahead and add labels. And we can see our ETF has about 11% of our portfolio's capital. We'll add stocks right here. Stocks is about 46% of our portfolio's capital. And then we're going to type out crypto, which is at 42%. And let's go ahead and give this a title. Let's just go ahead and title it Allocation for now. And we'll bold that text. And now we officially have our first chart on our investments dashboard. So I'm just going to go ahead and resize this just a little bit, but we can come back to this later and format it as well. So now we're ready to make our growth chart. But to do this, we need to make a worksheet over here to the side. So this is just going to be a worksheet. So I'm just going to title it Investment Worksheet. And all we need to do on this worksheet is we want to list off all of our ETFs, our cryptocurrency investments, and our stock investments. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste these headers right here. And now I'm just going to plug in all of those investments. So you can see how I'm going to do that here. I'm just going to do equals, and I'm going to click on the symbol and hit enter, and I'll drag this over to the side. Let's see, it didn't come out right. Let me try that one more time. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to drag this out to the side, and I'll drag it down. So now my other ETF is listed. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for my cryptocurrencies. So I'm going to select my first cryptocurrency and pull this out to the right and then drag it down. So now I have all of my cryptocurrencies listed as well. And now let's go ahead and do the same thing for our stocks. I'll select Apple and I'm going to hit enter, and I'll drag it out to the right and then drag it down. So now we have all of our investments listed on this page, and we're going to use this page to make a couple of charts. And this first chart that we want to make is our growth chart. So I'm going to highlight everything for symbols and our growth, and let's click on chart. And this chart looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy it and paste it over on our dashboard. And we're going to put it right here. We'll do a little bit more reformatting later. Let's go ahead and try to get it close for now. So let's go ahead and add a title, and all I'm going to title this is just growth. And I'll hit enter, and I'm going to bold that title as well. So now let's jump back over to our investment worksheet. We can delete this chart, but now I want to make a cost versus market value chart. So I'm going to select my symbol, cost, and market value. And then I'm going to insert a chart. And it looks like it's showing up the way we want it. So let's just go ahead and copy and paste this onto our dashboard. And we'll put this chart right below our growth chart. And let's go ahead and give it labels. And we'll label our blue cost. And then we'll come over here and we will label the red market value. Then I'm just going to title this chart cost versus market value. Let's see if I can spell it correctly. And then I'm just going to bold this text as well. Now we're going to do some formatting here. Now I'm going to jump back over to our worksheet, and I'm going to highlight my symbol. I'm also going to highlight my market value. And what I'm trying to make is an allocation by holdings chart. And so for this chart, we're going to want this to be a pie chart. So let's go ahead and go to insert and click on chart. And it's showing as a bar chart, but let's go ahead and change that to pie. So now we can see what percent each of our holdings is making up in our portfolio. So let's copy and paste this over to our dashboard. I'm going to bring it up here to the top right. And I'm going to kind of line it up here. And now the final chart I want is I'm just going to copy and paste my geo map from my ETF Tracker over. And this is going to allow us, like I've said earlier, to see where most of our capital is tied up as far as our ETFs go. Let me just go ahead and try to resize this some. And I'm just going to do a little bit more formatting real quick to make sure and see if we can make everything line up just a little bit better. Let's try to make these charts about the same size. So I'm going to do that here. I'll raise this up just a little bit here, and then I'll do the same thing with my geomap. And it looks like our investment dashboard is almost complete. There's just a few more things that we need to do. Let's go ahead and add some conditional formatting to our growth and dollar gain for each of our breakdowns and for our portfolio. So I'm going to add conditional formatting here, but this time I want the text to either show up as green or red. So anything above 0, I want the text to show up green. So I got to change it to text right here. And I still want the cell to show up as white this time. So now we're going to say anything that is less than 0, we want to show up as red. And okay, so now we have made that adjustment here. So now I'm just going to go ahead and jump forward and color everything in. Okay, so I have jumped forward and colored everything in, and now you can see exactly what our finished product looks like. And this is our investment dashboard. You can see our stock, crypto, ETF breakdown, as well as all of our charts, our portfolio breakdown, and we also have our stock tab, our crypto tab, our ETF tab, and then an analysis of our individual ETFs. So now our investment tracker is officially complete. If you'd like to be able to download this tracker, then you can head over to my Patreon page at the link in the description. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.